Hi. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know who I am, and you'll know that I've made no bones about the fact I have no idea where to start with a YouTube channel. So this is me completely winging it, but trying my best. I thought I'd start off with some basics about me and make CF easier for you guys to digest. I get so many questions. So, cystic fibrosis is a genetic condition, so your mum and dad need to have cystic fibrosis genes, CF genes, to give them to you. Your siblings will likely carry one of those genes, so will always need to get tested when they go on to have children with their partner to check that their child is not at risk of having cystic fibrosis themselves. So I was diagnosed at 24 hours old, and my mum found out by a doctor noticing the swelling in my stomach. My stomach was very distended for a newborn baby, and I believe I didn't pass my meconium, which is the black poo. I either didn't pass any or passed too much. I'm not completely clear on that. It was a long time ago. However, that is when the sort of first big move for me as a baby came in, the first big thing to happen. And I'll show you the scar now. So here is a scar, which when I was younger would literally go all the way around here, but obviously my stomach has grown now. That was an operation called a meconium ileus. I will put the spelling for that here in the video. And that is where they removed my small bowel. So I had my meconium ileus at, I believe it was a day old. It could have been a day or two, but that needed to happen quickly. Some CFs who have the meconium ileus will end up with a stoma bag. I'll put some pictures in of me as a baby here. See all of my tubes and whatnot. It's a very scary time for my mum. I as a parent couldn't go through that myself. I think I could now, because I know that, I know the prospects of a child with cystic fibrosis now are very, very good, and I know a lot of people will love to hear that. But back then, when there wasn't so much known about it, I think I would have shat my pants. That's day one of me being born. I believe I was then taken to Bristol Children's Hospital. I think that is where I had my meconium ileus. This is all very sort of, my mum was her head was not in the right place at that time, so it's difficult for her to remember everything and the timeline of everything because it was all such a blur. There wasn't a lot known about CF at that point, so I just spent 3 months in Bristol Children's Hospital while they got the stomach thing sorted, figured out what I needed, and then sort of just left me and my mum to our own devices. So I have a lot of medication, and that will be another video I do. I'm not going to do this now, but I will go through the medications I take in another video. Obviously I take daily medication. I take medication to digest my food, so every time I eat or every time I have something that contains fat, I need to take tablets, and they're called Creon. If I don't, there's going to be a nasty situation on your hands. Think of IBS times 1,000, like, it's unforgiving. My childhood wasn't terrible when it comes to cystic fibrosis. I did quite well. I don't remember being in hospital until I was sort of 5 or 6. I hated going to the hospital school, by the way. It was absolutely awful. I used to love going to the playroom. I would do everything in my power to avoid it. I wasn't particularly poorly in my childhood, which is really good. I managed to do everything that children like to do at that age. I was still allowed to play in mud. My mum didn't want to shelter me too much because there was a belief that you need to build your immune system even in my position, and I completely believe that to this day. So I started rebelling against my treatment as I got older, and when I got into my teens I did not want to do my treatment. So I can't lie to you guys, I haven't been as regimental and good as I should have been through my life with my treatment. I seriously rebelled. I think I was just so done with being reminded every morning that I have CF. Do your nebulizers, do your medication, that I was sort of just like, nah, I can't be arsed, I'm just going to go out with my friends and deal with the consequences later. 28-year-old you is now dealing with the consequences. Anyway, that's going to happen, not with every CF child, But with so many CF children and teenagers, they're going to go through the rebellion stage, and that is a whole new video altogether that I'd love to do for some parents with children with CF now. I used to go in for IVs as a teenager. I would have routinely IVs, so every few months I would go in for IV antibiotics. Occasionally the feeding tube, just to keep my weight up, just to keep me good until like through the winter and things like that. Whereas as I got older, I went in because I needed to be in, and that happened an awful lot. So, sorry, I've talked so much, and I've tried to do it all in one breath, and that was not a good idea for me. So, not due to me rebelling, I was a lot more poorly into my late teens and early 20s, and that is the result of having a child. So with cystic fibrosis, you are told you shouldn't have a child, don't have a child. The strain on your body is going to be far too much for you, don't do it. It's too much of a risk, it's not worth it. Completely understand where they're coming from now. Back then, it was a massive, I'm going to do that anyway because you've told me not to do it. I always wanted to be a mum. I was a very nurturing, mothering person. I always had like dolls and stuff, and I did lots of medical things with my dolls, and I did my work experience in a nursery and the childminders. Children were always what I wanted to base my life around. Went on to have my son. I fell pregnant at 20 and had my son at 21. And through my pregnancy was textbook. It was brilliant. Like, I didn't have much sickness. I flew through my pregnancy until the last 8 weeks. I first grew a bug called Pseudomonas, which is a very dangerous bug for cystic fibrosis. Pseudomonas has an eradication process, so we go through 3 months of treatment to try and get rid of it. So sort of 8 weeks towards the end of my pregnancy, I stayed in hospital until I gave birth. I was in HDU in maternity for a few weeks, and then I just went onto the regular ward to spend my time there until I gave birth. The pregnancy and the birth itself was brilliant. It was just the Pseudomonas that caused me problems and a slight bit of pneumonia. It was very touch and go on that side of things, and it was very risky at that point. But luckily the treatment was doing better, and I managed to get through the rest of the pregnancy fine and have my birth. It was a natural birth. They do not know how I did it, but I did it, and I'm fucking proud of myself. It had the epidural ready to go. The cesarean was going to happen, and I was like, no it fucking isn't. I'm doing this by myself, I'm doing it naturally, and I don't care what state I'm in after. And I think because you know that's the only time you're going to go through that, you kind of think, I need to fucking enjoy this somehow. I was obviously, you know, it wasn't fun like that, but I needed to embrace that moment, so I didn't want any drugs. So I had gas and air occasionally, and they told me to come off that at one point. So I wanted to experience this whole thing without being knocked out or being numbed so that I couldn't feel it. And I'm really proud of myself, and I did a fucking great job. Fast forward to being a mum. This is where the problems started. I was in hospital a lot more after having my son because I was just constantly on the go. There was no more napping through the day. There was no more chilling out. There was no more recovering. It was, if you're recovering, you're doing it whilst you're being a parent. So I gave myself no time to recover or even look after myself. So like the teenage rebellion stage, I was now not doing my treatments as an adult, which is detrimental. So I struggled a little bit there, and I was in hospital a couple of times a year, which for me is more than usual. I went years without being in hospital. Now I wasn't managing to get through a year without being in hospital. Fast forward to being 23, 24, I was in hospital for a long period of time, and I had something called a DIOS, which is something that frequently happens with people with CF. Is we have a bowel blockage, because I only have one part of my bowel and not my small bowel. I had a blockage which was actually a near-death experience for me. That again is something I will talk about in depth in another video. I had my feeding tube in at that point also, and I was doing feeds at home. I ended up in 2019 going into hospital in November, and I didn't come out fully until the April of the next year. So I had gone home for a couple of weeks at a time, and I was straight back in again. This was one of the most scariest times of my life. Again, I think that should be another video. So from November through Christmas, I spent Christmas Day on the ward, and I had Christmas dinner at hospital, which, might I add, was the most disgusting roast dinner I've ever had. And that was really difficult. That was a really horrible time for me and everyone around me. I think there was, there was a lot of struggling with mental health for not just me, but for my loved ones. I then went back in during COVID, which wasn't fun. That was horrible. No visitors, no leaving your room. It was not great at all. I really struggled with that one. A lot happened in between this time that I don't want to talk about in this video, but it is something I need to ask permission to talk about. I managed to stay out of hospital for 6 months at that point, and I went back in October. And in October I found out that I had something called a Chiari malformation, which is a brain defect. The exploratory tests are still being done to find out exactly why I have this, because I've had scans before in my life that never revealed a Chiari malformation, yet you are supposed to be born with them. But I've had CTs and MRIs throughout my life that have never picked this up. So we are now finding out whether this has been caused by a medication. And that medication would be Kaftrio. Another video that I need to make, and it's going to be a sensitive one too, because there are people who have great success on Kaftrio, however I have not. So after the October visit, I managed to stay out for about 6 to 8 months, I think it's been, which is really good for me at the age I'm at, and at this current stage I'm at with my health. So I went in recently for 10 days, and altogether I had 5 weeks of IV antibiotics, which has completely stripped my system of anything good and bad in it. So I am so fatigued right now. My energy is so low, and I'm trying my best to get through each day. But it's been a bit more of a struggle mentally this time, which is something I need to cover in another video. The reason I keep saying all of these I need to do in another video is to look back and remind myself of what I need to talk about. So I do apologise for that. Remember, this is my first video. It's been a bit more difficult, and unfortunately I found out that I was growing a bug that I really never wanted to hear I was growing. We are hoping so much that my next sputum does not culture this bug. Now that I've had it, it's something I'm going to worry about more in the future, because I know that my body is susceptible to it. I am not feeling great mentally, but I'm doing my best, and I'm just pushing through each day. But I'm managing, I'm doing alright. The feed situation is something not new to me, but new to me at this age. I've managed to go I think it must be about 4 years without having any feeds. I think the last time I had feeds was 2017. And I kept that quiet. I didn't want anyone to see this. I didn't put it in any videos. I didn't social media it, nothing. This time around I thought, embrace it, because it's part of who you are, what you do, and your life. Like, no one's going to judge you for that. And if they do, well, they're a prick. A question that people like to have answered quite a lot is, why are you still eating if you have a tube? I can still eat, and it is encouraged that I eat as much as I can. The tube is there because it is pre-digested formula that my body will take in a lot better than food. If I eat at the moment, I'm feeling very nauseous, sometimes vomiting, and TMI here, the mucus in our bodies makes us feel really sick. It's not nice. It's not nice to have that there. So I struggle, and especially when I cough, I often vomit after I cough because of the stuff that comes up. So that makes me lose weight. My body fighting an infection makes me lose weight because I'm actually burning calories by doing nothing. My body is constantly fighting, therefore my body is losing calories. So the feed is less pressure for me, because I can just know that if I didn't feel like eating something today, there's something there to take the pressure off me. I also have shots of calorie supplements that I put down the tube as well for an extra boost. Sometimes if I don't plan on eating breakfast, or I feel too sick for breakfast, I'll put something down the tube. So that is the tube, and that's why I can still eat with the tube, and I know that's been a commonly asked question. This video has been a huge mishmash, and my timeline is very off. All of those things are things that I want to cover in a future video. I'm not going to say I hope you enjoyed this video, because it was so unpredictable. But I just wanted to introduce myself, show you a rough timeline of where I've come from, and each of those little bits I want to fill in over time. So you've got the gaps between the timeline, I'm going to fill those in for you. I've chose to do this at 28 years old after fighting for this my whole life. I had so many opportunities where I could have done this and documented the journey as it goes, but I'm going to document it from now on. That is my goal, and I want to show you guys that someone might look very normal, might kind of normal, but there's a lot you don't know about people. The struggles behind closed doors are very real, and I'm one of those people. The struggles behind closed doors are immense. The mental health side of cystic fibrosis is crippling. So I hope you come back to watch the next video at least, but I hope this was a good introduction to what CF is for me, where I've been, and a good idea of what you can expect to see in the future. Also, a good use of my new camera, and it gets me used to looking in the camera and not the screen, and gets me used to a setup of how I want to do this and tell my stories. And then I'm going to do vlogging in between this, and any hospital visits I have, you guys are going to be coming along with me. What I will say is, in the comments, please don't be afraid to ask questions. Put as many questions as you want in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them in any videos. CF parents, those who have CF children, if you want to ask me any questions, please feel free to ask. If you're worried about anything, I will do my best to talk to you about it. I do have a lengthy experience with cystic fibrosis. I'm doing my best to cope with the trauma that I have been through with cystic fibrosis, and talking to you guys about it is another coping mechanism for me, and showing you guys exactly what I'm going through kind of helps me also see that I'm going through a lot, and I need to be a bit not so hard on myself sometimes, because I am very hard on myself. But I appreciate you all for watching. Any questions, let me know in the comments or DM me on Instagram, and I will see you guys in the next video, and hopefully it's a lot better than this one. So I'll see you soon. Bye.